अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आज रियासत हम आपको ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं एम्बेसी ऑफ कज़ाकिस्तान जो इस्लामाबाद में है। कज़ाकिस्तान के सफारत खाने में मैं आज इसलिए मौजूद हूँ क्योंकि इस वक्त कज़ाकिस्तान ख़बरों में है और बहुत वहाँ पे मेजर डेवलपमेंट्स हो रही हैं। आप लोग अगर जो फॉलो कर रहे हैं, वहाँ पे पिछले दिनों प्रोटेस्ट हुआ है, वहाँ पे पेट्रोल की प्राइसेस, गैस की प्राइसेस जो हैं वो बढ़ी हैं। उसके नतीजे में प्रोटेस्ट, लोग सड़कों पे आए हैं। वहाँ पे हुकूमत एक तरह से कोलैप्स कर गई है। तो एक मेजर सिचुएशन है। कज़ाकिस्तान एक बहुत अहम मुल्क है, सेंट्रल एशिया का सबसे बड़ा मुल्क है रकबे के हवाले से, और इसकी स्ट्रेटिजिक जो अहमियत है वो भी बहुत है। एक तो ये ऑयल प्रोड्यूसिंग कंट्री है, दूसरा ये है कि तिजारत के हवाले से बहुत अहम है। एक तरफ चाइना है, चीन है, दूसरी तरफ रूस है। फिर कज़ाकिस्तान का जो एक तो इकॉनमी के हवाले से बहुत अहम है, लेकिन जो दूसरी वजह है इसकी अहमियत की वो ये है कि डिप्लोमेसी, सिफारतकारी के हवाले से और जियो स्ट्रेटजी के हवाले से कज़ाकिस्तान का बहुत अहम किरदार रहा है पिछले 30 सालों में, जब से कज़ाकिस्तान आज़ाद हुआ सोवियत यूनियन के ख़त्म होने के बाद। तो कज़ाकिस्तान जो है डिप्लोमेटिकली बहुत अहम इम्पॉर्टेंट मुल्क है, और जो डेवलपमेंट इस वक्त हो रही है कज़ाकिस्तान में वो तशवीशनाक है। दुनिया भर के ममालिक के लिए तो है ही, लेकिन साथ साथ जो ख़ित्ते के ममालिक हैं वो बहुत कंसर्नड हैं। और कज़ाकिस्तान में अगर, और फिर कज़ाकिस्तान का अफ़गानिस्तान के हवाले से भी बहुत अहम रोल है, अहम किरदार है, क्योंकि ये जो भी डिप्लोमेसी और सफारतकारी सेंट्रल एशिया में अफ़गानिस्तान के हवाले से हो रही है, उसमें कज़ाकिस्तान का बहुत अहम रोल है। मेरे साथ मैं यहाँ पे मौजूद हूँ आज कज़ाकिस्तान के सफारत खाने में इस्लामाबाद में, और आज हम गुफ्तगू करते हैं और बात करते हैं कज़ाकिस्तान के सफ़ीर से जो 6 महीने पहले इस्लामाबाद आए, और ये ऐन उस वक्त आए हैं जब अफ़गानिस्तान पे जो डिप्लोमेसी है वो एक हाई लेवल पे पहुंच गई, और फिर हमने देखा अगस्त के अंदर जो डेवलपमेंट्स अफ़गानिस्तान में हुई हैं। तो और जो एम्बेसडर साहब हैं कज़ाकिस्तान के, पहले अमेरिका में वाशिंगटन डीसी में रहे हैं, ब्रसल्स में भी उन्होंने काम किया है, और इस वक्त मैं बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ कि एम्बेसडर यर्जान किस्ताफिन यहाँ पे मौजूद हैं। और मिस्टर एम्बेसडर, थैंक यू वेरी मच for joining us.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And let me begin, Mr. Ambassador, with what's happening in Kazakhstan right now, because it's a matter of great concern for everyone in the region. And Kazakhstan is, and I was just telling my viewers in Urdu, it's one of the most important countries in the region in every way, more so politically and diplomatically. You punch above your weight. I mean, you're a very, very important country. So, what would you say about the situation right now in Afghanistan, in Kazakhstan?
Right now, situation is stabilizing. Our president has taken a number of measures aimed at, stabilizing the situation in the whole country. As you might know, during the first days of January, Kazakhstan has faced, I would say, the greatest challenge in the modern history of my country. So it started with social protests, and I must underline that these protests had a peaceful character, peaceful manner. But then some terroristic groups, some extremist groups were trying to take the opportunity and to attack and to destabilize the situation in Kazakhstan. And they started with attacking our biggest city, the city of Almaty. But then our president again, he took a very decisive actions, and now I believe that within the few next days we will stabilize the whole situation in our country, in Kazakhstan.
Mr. Ambassador, what are these groups, the terrorist groups and the extremist groups? Who are they?
So according to the information that we have, these are terrorist groups. There were some internal and external forces that were trying to attack our cities, our major cities, not only Almaty, And I must emphasize that they were attacking not only policemen or military people, they were attacking civilians, they were attacking firefighters, our medical organizations. So they were trying to seize our strategic facilities. So the main goal of these people were to destabilize the whole situation in Kazakhstan, to create chaos, and to destroy constitutional order. So this is the reason why our president, from the very beginning, he was in favor of very decisive steps, decisive measures. He instructed our law enforcement bodies to counteract to this, violence, to these attacks, and to kill anyone who would be trying to destroy our constitutional order.
Who are the members of these terrorist and extremist organizations?
We're still waiting for information from our law enforcement bodies. Our president decided to establish an inter-ministerial investigation group, and this investigation is underway. And I hope that within the next few weeks we will have some results, and we will know the names of these people and of these groups who were involved in these attacks.
Any arrests have been made? I know that there are many arrests made among the protesters, obviously, people who damaged public property and so forth, and those who attacked the law enforcement. But any arrests made from these terrorist and extremist groups?
Just today I received information that there were some arrests, and our law enforcement arrested terrorist and extremist groups members. So we are waiting for this information to be published, and as I said, we will know the names.
What was the key aim of these elements that tried to sabotage the stability of Kazakhstan? You mentioned they wanted to disturb public order and the constitutional order. When you say constitutional order, I get the feeling that this was a coup in the making. Is it right to describe it as a coup?
I would agree to some extent. So it was a coup d'etat, in fact. So the main goal of these people was not to, I would say, distract our country, but to destabilize. And everyone knows, everyone understands that it would influence negatively the whole situation in the region. And no one was, the official level of our neighboring countries, and not only, no one was, interested in these negative consequences. So that's why our president decided to ask for assistance from, for example, CSTO organization to support our government, to support our country in this very difficult time. And, talking about this coup d'etat, I must say that there are some suspicion that we had some kind of, as I said, internal and external forces. And this is probably the reason why the former chairman of the National Security Committee was arrested, as you might know, Mr. Masimov. So, as I said, the investigation is underway, and let's wait for the outcomes of this investigation, and I hope that we will finally know the truth.
The help that your government sought from the CSO and from some of the neighboring countries, in particular from Russia, has generated a lot of speculation in the international media. And you've served in Washington, D.C., and you've probably been following some of the reporting on this. Some concern was expressed with regards to the deployment of external forces, foreign forces in Kazakhstan on the request of your government, obviously. What would you say to these concerns that were expressed in the international media?
I would say that there is nothing to worry about. These forces, I mean the CSTO forces, they would be deployed on a temporary basis. They are not going to stay forever in our country. This is the first point. The second point is that no one from the member states of CSTO organization are interested in deploying military forces in Kazakhstan, because there is no any reason for having these forces in our country. So the main mission of these people is to protect our strategic facilities. They are not going to participate in this anti-terrorism operation that is taking place currently in our country. This mission would be accomplished by our own local law enforcement bodies, including Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Internal Affairs, so on and so forth. So the main mission of these CSTO forces just to assist us, to help to protect our strategic facilities. That's it.
So do you confirm, Mr. Ambassador, that currently the anti-terrorism operations taking place inside Kazakhstan have no participation from CSTO forces?
No.
At all?
At all.
It's being conducted by?
It's been conducted by our local law enforcement bodies.
Will you, at some point, do you think your government will seek external assistance in these?
No, I don't think so, because the situation is gradually stabilizing, and the only, as they say, hotspot that we have today is in Almaty region. That's it. Other major cities are under control, they are stabilized, and the situation is, is getting smooth.
Do you have any indications that under of these protests, your vital strategic and economic sites within Kazakhstan were to be attacked during these protests? I'm in particular referring to oil industry related sites, oil fields. Do you have any indication that there was a plan to attack these sites?
No, no. The main objects for these attacks were public sites. For example, in Almaty, they were trying to seize our airport, our administrative offices, including our local regional authorities' offices, our police department, hospitals, something like that. But they didn't attack any of those objects that you mentioned.
This is very fascinating, the profile of the venues and places that were attacked, the offices and so forth. Does that also include your broadcast, state broadcast
yes.
infrastructure?
Yeah, yeah. They were trying to seize our national broadcast office, but thanks to the efforts of our law enforcement bodies, they failed finally.
Right. Very boldly, Mr. Ambassador, you yourself and also your government refer to the elements behind these protests as being both internal and external. When you mentioned that the national broadcasts there was an attempt to seize them, and also the offices of the government, and you mentioned the coup d'etat, I mean, it's very obvious. It means that very, very powerful internal elements were also involved. This creates a lot of concern, obviously, in the neighborhood with regards to, I mean, Kazakhstan is not a small country and it has a lot of influence in the region and internationally as well. I would say, how stable is the government at this point?
You know, the thing is that after these protests that took place in Kazakhstan, our president decided to dissolve the government. And tomorrow, our president will be addressing the parliament of Kazakhstan. And probably tomorrow he will nominate new members to our government, including new prime minister.
I have a few more questions, Mr.
Sure.
Ambassador, and the situation in Kazakhstan is very fluid. I would like to take a quick break, and when I come back, I would like to talk about Kazakhstan's foreign relations, which are very, very important and it seems those relations are playing a key role now in helping your government stabilize the situation in Kazakhstan. और हम एक वक्फा लेते हैं और वापस आएंगे और मैं एम्बेसडर साहब से ये पूछूंगा कि कज़ाख़स्तान के जो बैरूनी ताल्लुकात हैं जो अब मददगार साबित हुए हैं कज़ाख़स्तान को स्टेबलाइज करने में, जबकि ये कोशिश की गई कि अंदरूनी और बैरूनी अनासर ने मिल के जो कोशिश की कि एक कू जैसी कैफियत पैदा की जाए कज़ाख़स्तान में, उससे अब कज़ाख़स्तान हुकूमत जो है वो निमट रही है। लेकिन ये जो बैरूनी ताल्लुकात हैं ये कैसे काम आ रहे हैं, और फिर जो रूस के साथ ताल्लुकात, चीन के साथ और अमेरिका के साथ, इसके बारे में मैं एम्बेसडर साहब से पूछूंगा। आपने मेरे साथ रहना है, वक्फे के बाद मिलते हैं। वेलकम बैक। आप देख रहे हैं रियासत और मैं कज़ाख़स्तान के जो सिफारत खाना है इस्लामाबाद में, वहाँ से आज का प्रोग्राम आप तक पहुँचा रहे हैं और मेरे साथ जो सफ़ीर हैं कज़ाख़स्तान के वो मौजूद हैं। मिस्टर एम्बेसडर, your foreign ties in Kazakhstan has immense diplomatic influence in the region and internationally, and these relations really came handy to your government during this situation. There's a lot of talk about, first of all, Kazakhstan's relationship with Russia. Now, both countries have enjoyed traditionally very, very close and strong relations, but with the deployment of forces, the bulk of them being from Russia, there are some questions being raised in the international media with regards to that. You mentioned before the break that the deployment is temporary. What do you say about, and how do you answer the concern being expressed specifically in the West with regards to Russia's role in the current crisis in Kazakhstan?
I would say, first of all, that Kazakhstan and Russia are strategic partners. We are members of the Eurasian Economic Union. We are members of the, that I mentioned before, a Collective Security Treaty Organization and many other regional international organizations. What I'm trying to see is that Kazakhstan and Russia has no any conflicts, any disagreements. Just like any other countries in the world, so from time to time we have some tensions, we have some, things that we need to discuss, but still I have to say and I have to emphasize that we are strategic partners. That's why we believe that there is no any, reason for any doubts that this military presence, will continue for a long time. As our president said several times, that as soon as the situation in Kazakhstan is stabilized, these people will leave our country. So it's just, in my opinion, it's just a matter of, maximum few weeks, nothing more.
I'm sure you've seen the Western media reports with regards to the Russian role, and a lot of comparisons are being made to, for example, Russia's relationship with Syria being replicated in Kazakhstan, and so forth. Obviously, whenever there is this kind of situation anywhere, there's always some exaggeration in media reporting. It happens, especially when the situation is fluid. Now that your government is explaining the exact situation and things are getting now under control, obviously things would become even clearer. Generally speaking, do you feel that Kazakhstan would emerge stronger from this situation? And how would you also evaluate the reactions by Kazakhstan's neighbors? What was their reaction and their contribution or help? And did you seek the help of your neighboring countries?
So I fully agree with you that Kazakhstan has a lot to learn from this tragedy, from this very, I would say, difficult lesson. From the very beginning, our neighboring countries, our brothers from Central Asian countries supported us, and we see only, I would say, brotherly signs of support, help, and even, for example, in Kyrgyzstan, people, not the government, but people, they organize kind of assistance to our citizens who were not able to leave Kyrgyzstan for Kazakhstan. So we see that there is no any kind of sign of trying to, not to support our government or our people whatsoever. So again, we see only support, and we don't see any troubles or problems from our neighboring countries, and not only neighboring countries in general. Even here in Pakistan, I feel great support from your citizens, and I received so many messages with very warm words, with support that we all believe that Kazakhstan will be stabilized very soon and the peace will be restored.
Mr. Ambassador, I will come to the relationship between Pakistan and Kazakhstan in a few minutes. But before that, let me ask you this question, and it's very important. Kazakhstan has been for quite some time, has been seen by the neighboring countries as a model for economic development, for stability, also for political evolution, and for social cohesion as well. And Kazakhstan has remained safe from the scourge of terrorism and from the scourge of extremism due to some very good and wise policies by the Kazakh governments. What has changed now? I mean, I'm sure this is too early to ask, I know, and you very rightly refer to the Kazakh people now, and the Kazakh society would be drawing lessons from what happened. But what do you think has gone wrong for this kind of situation to emerge?
It's a very good question. I must say that during these 3 decades, Kazakhstan enjoyed a very, peaceful society, I must say. We didn't have any conflicts based on, religious or ethnic background. So Kazakhstan is a great, I would say, model for kind of interethnic and interfaith peace and harmony. And it is. I must say that this situation that we face today has nothing to do with our community, with our society. It was a plot. And I must say that it was kind of maybe even conspiracy. As I mentioned before, some internal and external forces tried to destabilize Kazakhstan. It's a very important factor that it's not about our society, it's not about our governments. If you noticed the protests that took place initially in the western part of our country, there was nothing, with what happened, for example, in Almaty. What I'm trying to say is that it's not about our people who try to attack, governmental offices or, disturb civilians, so attack our policemen, so on and so forth. So it was, that's the reason why we consider and we believe that it was kind of terroristic group who were trying to attack our country, not only our government, in general our country, to destabilize our country. I believe that, unfortunately, as we see now, not everyone was happy with very stable Kazakhstan, with a very prosperous Kazakhstan, with Kazakhstan which is a leading economy in the region. So that's why some, forces were trying to destabilize the situation in our country.
Right. Economically, Kazakhstan is a very strong and robust economy. How would you characterize economically Kazakhstan's relationship with, on the one side, with China, and on the other hand, with Russia?
Both countries are very important economic partners for our country. our trade partners. So, from the very beginning, our country were implementing so-called multi-vectoral foreign policy. We were developing our relations not only with, for example, Russia or China, but also with the European Union, with the United States, with other countries in the world. We were in favor of developing multilateral approach. I mean that we were not focused only on Russia or China again, or any other neighboring country of Kazakhstan, but still what I'm trying to say is that China as well as Russia are very important partners for us. We have very good relations with both countries, and again we are members of same regional organizations, and our trade partnership is the only, another part of our cooperation. So I believe that our cooperation, economic cooperation, our investment cooperation will be developing.
There was some speculation with the events right now in Kazakhstan that somehow maybe this could impact Kazakhstan's traditionally open, very robust diplomacy with the entire world, specifically also with the West. What I understand from what you just said is that Kazakhstan will continue to have robust relations with its neighbors, but at the same time it will continue to have robust relations with the world, including with the Western countries, with the United States, with the European Union. Is that correct?
Sure. You see, due to the geopolitical location of our country, we always say that Kazakhstan is a kind of bridge between East and West. I'll just give you another example that Kazakhstan is an integral part of the One Belt, One Road initiative. And just last year, we finalized construction of the railroad that connects the western part of China with European countries. It's a great evidence of how Kazakhstan important is, not only for Russia and China, for example, but also for other countries, even for the European Union. And taking into account the size of our economy, taking into account the importance of our country, we could not limit our cooperation only to our neighboring countries. We should and we will develop our cooperation with other foreign countries as well, including big, major powers, as well as, other countries of the world.
If I would move now to Afghanistan, and it's a coincidence that your appointment in Islamabad came right at the peak of Afghanistan diplomacy, with the developments in Afghanistan, obviously, specifically what happened in August. And you've been obviously representing your country in important places. The last two were Washington, D.C. and Brussels, so both the United States and the European Union. And how do you see right now the movement to sort of stabilize Afghanistan in terms of humanitarian assistance in the aftermath of the foreign ministers' meeting of the OIC in Islamabad, with the participation of the big powers, obviously? How do you see the movement toward humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan?
So I must say that our government has visited Afghanistan twice. In September, special envoy of our President on International Cooperation, His Excellency Mr. Yerzhan Kistafin, visited Kabul. Just recently, it took place, I believe, in December. Our Minister of Trade and Integration, Mr. Sultanov, he visited Kabul. We have two main objects.
Just a week before the OIC foreign ministers meeting. Yeah.
Exactly, yes. So we have two main objects. The first one is to restore our bilateral trade. We see that today Afghanistan faces a severe crisis in terms of developing its own national economy. And the second point is to provide humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan. We understand that without this international support, it will be extremely difficult to survive for the Afghan people. And we are in favor of developing dialogue with the Taliban, with the government of Afghanistan. We have what we have. So the absence of dialogue would never ever help us to convince those people that they have to reconsider their approach, that they have to develop a new strategy for Afghanistan, that they have to develop a new governmental policy for their own people. So that's why we believe that it is only through the dialogue we can help Afghanistan to develop their own country.
What's the position of the government of Kazakhstan on extending diplomatic recognition to currently there's an interim government in Afghanistan, obviously, and there's a process underway, and the world is expecting basically a fully representative government in Kabul at some point in the future. What is the take of your government on extending diplomatic recognition to the government in Kabul?
In our opinion, our stance is that we should be focused on practical issues today, on very practical, pragmatical issues such as help to the Afghan people that I mentioned before. This recognition, I'm not sure if this recognition is going to help to Afghanistan or to the people of Afghanistan. So that's why we decided to take a very pragmatic approach and to be concentrated on helping to develop the economy of Afghanistan.
Oh, that's very interesting. I would like to move also to the Pakistan-Kazakhstan relationship. A very, very important relationship, and two very important countries in this region. And allow me, Mr. Ambassador, to take a very quick break, and I'll come back and we'll discuss our bilateral ties. आपने मेरे साथ रहना है. अब हम आखिरी जो सेगमेंट है हमारा प्रोग्राम का, पाकिस्तान और कज़ाख़स्तान के जो ताल्लुकात हैं, उस पर थोड़ी सी नज़र डालते हैं. वक्फ़े के बाद मुलाकात होती है. वेलकम बैक. आप देख रहे हैं रियासत. हम कज़ाख़स्तान के सफारत खाने में हैं और एम्बेसडर साहब जो हैं कज़ाख़स्तान के मेरे साथ यहाँ पे मौजूद हैं. मिस्टर एम्बेसडर, in the last few minutes that I have, I'd like to focus on the Kazakh-Pakistan relationship. And how would you characterize our relationship right now, diplomatically and economically and people-to-people ties?
So I would say that Kazakhstan and Pakistan enjoy very friendly relations. We have a very good political dialogue. We have a very good diplomatic ties. But at the same time, as you rightly, divided all these dimensions, I must say today we should be focused on developing our economic cooperation. On September 16th, our president for the first time met with Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran Khan. This meeting took place in Dushanbe at the sidelines of Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. And the main focus was on our economic cooperation. According to our statistics, our bilateral trade turnover today is something about $45 million. According to your statistics, it's something about $103 million. But at the same time, for such big countries as Kazakhstan and Pakistan, it's almost nothing. So there is a huge potential to develop our trade, to develop our economic ties, so on and so forth. So that's why last November we organized for the first time a two-day business forum in Almaty. About 100 people attended this event, and I believe that 35 Pakistani business people came to Almaty. As they said, it was kind of eye-opener for them. The main issue that we need to address today is the lack of information. Our peoples, unfortunately, know little about each other. So we need to address this very important issue and to increase awareness of our communities about each other, not only B2B, but in general. Talking about people to people, it's another very important dimension. I must say that it's another priority for my embassy, for my team. We are trying to develop cooperation, direct ties between our universities, for example. It's well known that Pakistan is one of the youngest nations in the world, and if we want to build a solid foundation on the long-term perspectives, we should be focused also on our young. So that's why we believe that we should develop interaction between our young people as well. Speaking in general, when it comes to people, we should work not only at the level of our university, we should work at the level of our, for example, think tanks. Think tanks, in my humble opinion, it's a kind of intellectual diplomacy. Our experts community, our academic circles should establish direct interaction to exchange views, to exchange assessment, to exchange information, and to develop this interaction, because I believe it would be very useful to have their assessment. For example, in December, for the first time, we organized a roundtable inviting 5 top think tanks from Pakistan and 5 top think tanks from Kazakhstan to participate in this roundtable dedicated to the 30th anniversary of independence of our country. And I believe it was quite useful and fruitful, and these people could elaborate on practical recommendations.
Did this happen for the first time, Mr. Ambassador?
Yes, for the first time.
It was the first meeting of its kind?
First meeting, yes.
Between think tanks?
Yeah. In general, we invited so far 10 top think tanks from both countries. So we want to, to continue this practice. I see that it was quite interesting and useful for both sides.
One of the biggest impediments to land trade, and also probably even people-to-people exchanges through land routes, is the situation in Afghanistan, obviously. And it's a whole complex, different issue. But do you feel that both countries, Pakistan and Kazakhstan, can sidestep the situation in Afghanistan and still develop very robust trade? Is it possible?
You see, I always say that without Afghanistan, it would be extremely difficult to develop our cooperation, including our bilateral trade. But still, we have some other options that we might use if it's needed. First of all, it's Karakorum Highway. And the second option, apart from Afghanistan, is the route that we can use via Iran through the Caspian Sea. But I must say that I receive very positive information from our logistics companies, including Pakistani logistics companies. They say that nowadays, fortunately, it's much easier to deliver goods through Afghanistan than it was before the Taliban. You see, the Taliban, you just have to pay the fee. It's kind of 50,000 rupees, and that's it. And you can easily cross Afghanistan and deliver goods to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, whatsoever. And they said that they have trucks every 10 days delivering goods between Kazakhstan and Pakistan. Now what we want to do is to work on so-called transit trade agreement. This agreement would help us to boost our bilateral trade using TIR convention. So, as I said previously, we have so many things to do, and there is a great potential for developing collaboration between our countries.
Are you expecting this year, I get a sense from what you describe right now, the meetings, the people-to-people context, the political context, and on the level of think tanks, for example, I get a sense, and now with this very interesting little bit nugget of news that you mentioned about the possibility of using Afghanistan now, and the situation has changed. So do you feel that this year, 2022, could see some movement, some expansion in trade ties?
You see,
and the TTA, the Transit Trade Agreement?
You see, I believe that it's time to, as I say, to start a brand new chapter in the history of our bilateral relations. And what I see today is that there is a good political will from both sides. When I meet with people from your government, I hear that the Central Asian region is a top priority for Pakistan in terms of implementing the foreign policy. Moreover, when I arrived in the middle of June, I read 2 articles written by Prime Minister Imran Khan and published in I believe it was in Washington Post and in the New York Times. So the only region that he mentioned in terms of implementing the foreign policy of Pakistan was Central Asia. So I see that both sides are willing to develop cooperation, and it's time to, to act, and it's time to strengthen our ties, including our economic partnership.
That's great. Now, in the end, you've been here for a short time in Islamabad. It's been, 6 months, and intense diplomacy in those 6 months. Must have been very hectic for you.
Yeah, extremely.
Because this is the period where the developments in Afghanistan came, the SCO meeting in Dushanbe, and then the OIC meeting in December. So it has been quite hectic.
Yeah, very hectic. Moreover, I tried to visit your regions as well, because it's very important to establish direct communications, direct ties with regional communities. I visited Karachi, I visited Lahore, Peshawar, Sialkot. This year I'm planning to visit other important cities of your country in terms of developing economic cooperation between Kazakhstan and Pakistan. And yes, we will continue our work, and I hope that it will bring fruits in the near future.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time and for the great insights really into the situation inside Kazakhstan, because talking to you and listening to you right now, I get a completely different perspective on what's happening in Kazakhstan as compared to the coverage in the international media. And obviously we as journalists, when we cover stories, there's always the possibility of basing analysis maybe on incomplete information or exaggeration. There's always the chance of that happening. But it's always good to get the story and the facts on the ground direct from people who are involved with the situation. So I'm really very grateful for you that you shared the actual situation with me and with our team and with our viewers. And we look forward to, and we wish you the best of luck here since you're new to Islamabad. And we hope to see you again in our program, and maybe in the next time we meet you, maybe we will be able to talk about progress in the transit trade agreement potentially, where you are trying to push for that, and it's really great. And the people-to-people contact, and I think there's tremendous potential. In conclusion, I would mention a large number of Pakistani journalists, Pakistani social media journalists as well, did get the chance to visit your great country and participate in the Eurasia Media Forum sessions over the years. And a great platform that really indicates and shows how your country is indeed a bridge between the East and the West. So thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
और ये हमारा इंटरव्यू था आज का। मुझे और हमारी टीम को इजाज़त दीजिए, आपसे फिर मुलाकात होगी। अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।